it's impossible to enter a conversation on the greatest fighters of all time without mentioning the name Joe Louis.
He was bad in Captain Clay, he bad in Sugar Ray, he done whipped Mike Tyson there, he whipped all their asses.
And for a very good reason. The sharecropper's son, who started life in a dirt-floored shack in Jim Crow, Alabama, ushered in the most dominant reign in boxing history in any weight class, with a punch so hard that heavyweights flinched just hearing his name.
Explosive right to the jaw, hurts Max Millen. Dynamite right to the jaw, and Millen goes down.
A fighter both in the ring and out. He didn't hide behind his belt when America went to war. Although he was the biggest name in boxing, he still put on a uniform, accepted a private's pay of $21 a month, fought 96 exhibitions for soldiers who couldn't pay a dime, giving away 4 years of his boxing prime to his country, donating hundreds of thousands to Army and Navy relief in the process. To the U.S. government, he was the smiling face of patriotism. But behind the scenes, America was quietly setting him up for financial execution. The Taxman counted every donated dollar as income, and his generosity quickly backfired. Interest piled up all the way up to 6 figures, and the same government that pinned medals to his chest took his purses, his investments, and even took a few $100s his mother left him when she died. So how do you go from being a nation's hope, destroying Hitler's favorite boxer in 1 round and uniting a country in the middle of World War II, to wrestling for cash, living on handouts, and greeting tourists at a casino just to stay ahead of the IRS? How does the perfect American champion end up broke, paranoid, in a wheelchair, with his fiercest rival quietly paying his medical bills? This is the rise and depressing downfall of Joe Louis.
My father, Joseph Louis Barrow, was born to a sharecropping family. It was Chambers County, Alabama. My grandmother was an extraordinary woman and really kept that family together because my grandfather had a mental problem and was put in an asylum very early on when my father was a baby. So he really didn't know who his father was.
He's poor, he's black, he's one of 8 children. The chances of this guy doing anything in his life is just absolutely remote.
His parents moved up from Chambers County because of the segregation that was going on in the South. He was part of the entire black migration from the South to the North because that's where the jobs were. And that's where there was opportunities. There was tremendous prejudice. In fact, the reason they moved is that my grandmother and my step-grandfather, Pat Brooks, went over to a part of the county, and on their way back, the Ku Klux Klan stopped them. Fortunately, one of the Klansmen knew Pat Brooks, and he basically said, "I know him, let him go, because he's a good nigger." At that point, he decided that his family was leaving the South and that they were going to go to the North.
Joe shows up in Detroit, and he's a shy kid. He has virtually no education. He starts doing jobs. I mean, he's a laborer. He'll work in Ford for a while, but before that, he works at whatever manual job he can find. He delivers ice.
They were making ends meet. In fact, my grandmother had enough extra change to eventually give my father monies for violin lessons. He was given 25 cents a week to go to his violin lessons. And his good friend Thurston McKinney decided that his good friend Joe Louis was too strong and too powerful to be playing the fiddle. Thurston actually conned him into coming over to the Brewster Recreation Center, and that's where he started boxing.
He talked me into going to the gym with him to see him train. So I went down to see him train, and I liked it. So next day, I went with him again to the gym, and I joined the gym. And he would take that 25 cents, Bert, and he'd use it to rent the locker each week. So when I got home from gym one day, I saw my music teacher was talking with my mother. I think he must have told my mother I'd been missing the class so many times. And at the end of the day, she was not very happy with his boxing career. But she said, if that's what you want to do, then you should be the very best you can be.
At what point did this ex-violin player become Joe Louis?
Well, he was registering for a Golden Gloves bout. And it was a very small registration card, and he was trying to get Joe Louis Barrow on the card. And all he could get was Joe Louis, and the person taking the registration says, just use Joe Louis, it's just a name. it won't matter. But my father was pretty easygoing, Bert, and he just went with the tide, and Joe Louis was it.
He's quickly matched in an amateur fight, his first fight, and Joe Louis gets beaten up pretty badly.
And he got knocked down 7 times, but he kept getting up.
People don't realize how many times he fought as an amateur. He fought over 50 times, won a Gold Glove, and found that area of competence that all kids are looking for. And boxing was that for Joe Louis.
By mid-1934, Joe's amateur record stood at 50 wins in 54 amateur bouts, as observers flagged his fast, machine-made jab and serialized power as something new in the American heavyweight pipeline.
And he was something that was a revelation. They had never seen anything like this.
Soon enough, the numbers banker with deep community ties and king of the illegal numbers rackets in the city's black neighborhoods, John Roxborough, spotted Joe's ceiling and started footing his bills, clothes, and training needs. He was known as a generous fixer who funded teams and sent kids to college. John channeled that same patron spirit into getting Joe a real shot. Under his care, Joe moved to Chicago, where Julian Black, a mortician who was involved in illegal gambling, also assumed managerial duties. The former lightweight welter contender with ring genius and a rough past, Jack Chappie Blackburn, was tasked with training Joe, a task which he initially refused.
Jack Blackburn, quite frankly, comes with some baggage. He's an alcoholic. He's a very bitter man. He had done some jail time for a murder, but he knows boxing. This guy is as good as they get.
Jack Blackburn says, sure, you bring that white boy around, I'll take a look at him. And they break the news to Jack that this guy's black. And he said, I don't want to train a black fighter. And the reasoning being is, there's nothing I can do with him that will be successful.
And I trained Bud Taylor and Sammy Mandel, 2 champions. Mm-hmm. And yet he doesn't want your father.
No.
Because he doesn't feel that there's any future in a black heavyweight. How did they get Blackburn, who had been one hell of a fighter, how did they get him to take Joe Louis now?
They ended up giving him a percentage of the purses. That was the final straw. Because Chappie didn't think my father had any talent. And so he didn't want him, and I think you're absolutely right, that he didn't want to get tied down to a black fighter who would never, ever get a chance at the heavyweight champion.
Segregation ran deep in society, and boxing was no exception. For decades, the heavyweight crown sat behind a hard color bar as white champions and promoters routinely refused black challengers. John L. Sullivan had openly said white men shouldn't fight black men, and later, Jack Dempsey never fought the top black contender. Harry Wills, despite years of pressure and de facto policies, kept elite black heavyweights like Wills and Sam Langford boxed out. But only one man had been able to pierce that wall. For years, champion Tommy Burns drew the color line, so Jack Johnson literally chased him around the world. In Australia, promoter Hugh D. Huge Deal McIntosh finally raised Burns' asking price to $30,000, about $1 million in today's money, and put the bout on in Sydney's Rushcutter Bay, December 26, 1908. Johnson accepted a far smaller purse of about $5,000, and he dominated, knocking Burns down early, taunting him, and battering him until police halted it in round 14.
At this very moment, in the early seconds of round 14, the police shut off the motion picture cameras and stepped into the ring, awarding the heavyweight championship of the world to Jack Johnson,
making him the first ever black world heavyweight champion. Johnson lived as a free man, and as a result, he was perceived as arrogant, flamboyant, and uppity by the public, and his relationships with white women made him a target. Had he not been heavyweight champion of the world, Johnson would likely have been murdered in an America that still lynched black men for far less. His easy win over the Great White Hope, ex-champ James J. Jeffries, set off nationwide riots with deaths, hundreds injured, and bans on the fight film. The social shockwaves hardened the sport's racial barricades, and as a result, many white fans, editors, and officials swore there would never be another black champion after Johnson. This never-again sentiment forced the Joe Louis camp to carefully construct a behavioral code that would disarm white America, using Jack Johnson as a cautionary tale.
Louis came along with this very carefully crafted public image to make him acceptable to the white public.
For almost 25 years after Jack Johnson became heavyweight champion, blacks got no shot at a heavyweight championship.
They knew the public remembered the reign of Jack Johnson, how Johnson had taunted opponents, how Johnson had been flamboyant, how Johnson had openly gone around with white women, things which were resented by white America at that time.
Jack Johnson drove the white establishment nuts. He was everything that would give white America a stroke.
They knew they had to have Louis behave, at least publicly, in a very, very different way.
His managers gave him a written list of things he could and could not do. They were all based on him not replicating the public conduct of Jack Johnson.
No braggadocio, no white women, no leering and taunting and so forth in the ring, particularly of white contenders. Go in, take care of your business in a workmanlike fashion, and get out.
He was to operate at all times as a black man with dignity.
He wouldn't even eat watermelon and be photographed eating it, which was his favorite food, for fear it would feed the stereotype. Jack Johnson wasn't in Louis's corner, literally and figuratively. He had applied to Louis to train him. One of the conditions was that Louis fire Jack Blackburn, who had fought Jack Johnson way back at the turn of the century, and they were enemies. Not only would Louis have nothing to do with it, he viewed Jack Johnson as 10 miles of bad road.
Wouldn't you think Jack Johnson would be solidly behind the new young black champion? He was not.
No, he was jealous of the fact he had wanted to be, if not the only, at least the star of the division for African Americans or then blacks.
With Jack Johnson as a role model of what not to be, Joe made his pro debut a few weeks after his 20th birthday, knocking out Jack Kraken in the opening round for a purse of $59. Over the next year, Joe's pro record extended to 19 straight wins with 15 knockouts. It was clear that he possessed the talent, but he still needed a master strategist to open up the door.
Jimmy Johnston is running Madison Square Garden at this time. Roxborough calls him up. Do you want Louis? Johnston says, we don't need him.
But one man wasn't about to let race blind him from capitalizing on the most promising talent on the heavyweight scene. New York ticket broker and promoter Mike Jacobs had built a publicity machine through the Hearst Press and launched the 20th Century Sporting Club. He signed Joe to an exclusive multi-year deal, with Joe's share being roughly 37% of the gate. Jacobs needed a marquee ex-champion to legitimize Joe's rise in New York, someone who guaranteed headlines and a huge gate, while giving Joe a credible yet beatable test. And one man fit that bill perfectly.
Man Mountain, the Ambling Alp, Satchel Feet. Whatever the nickname, it meant Primo Carnera, the biggest man ever to win the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship.
The 6'6", 260-pound giant held the title between 1933 and 34, beating Jack Sharkey for the crown and defending it twice before losing it to Max Baer. And on June 25th, 1935, the 82-7 record holder went head-to-head with a sensational youngster in front of an impressive Yankee Stadium crowd of 60,000.
Joe Louis is the sensation of the boxing world. He's only 21 years old. They call him the Brown Bomber. If he wins tonight, he'll be in line to meet Max Schmeling. The winner of that fight is expected to get a crack at Jimmy Braddock's crown. But Primo isn't finding Louis an easy target tonight. Now round 6 of the scheduled 15-rounder. Carnera's down. The right cross to the jaw. Up at the count of 4, he's badly hurt. Another right cross. Again, Carnera hits the deck. Another count of 4. Down a third time. Carnera tells the referee he can't go on. It's all over. Joe Louis, the winner by a TKO in 2 minutes and 32 seconds of the 6th round. Young Joe Louis lives up to his reputation as the Brown Bomber and establishes himself the outstanding contender for Jim Braddock's heavyweight crown.
After his well-publicized 6th-round knockout, Joe was being hailed as the greatest gate attraction in boxing since Jack Dempsey, with the Carnera fight garnering $340,000. After the Yankee Stadium splash, Jacobs wanted a huge Midwest night to cement Joe as a national box office force, and the perfect opponent was Chicago's King Levinsky. Levinsky had fought most top heavyweights, and the previous year was ranked number 5. He owned wins over ex-champions Jack Sharkey and Tommy Loughran, so he brought credibility and a big hometown gate, an ideal step towards the Max Baer blockbuster that followed.
I am the king. I am in greatest shape in my life, and I'm going out to beat Joe Louis.
I am very confident, King, and I know you'll knock Joe Louis out.
Only 6 weeks after disposing of Carnera, Joe scored a first-round demolition, dropping Levinsky twice and finishing him at 221 in a merciless showcase of jab, right timing, and balance, as Levinsky reportedly pleaded with the referee, "Don't let him hit me again."
I'm satisfied you're going to be the next heavyweight champion of the world. I hope so. Well, Joe, as your manager, I'm going to do everything possible to get you a chance to fight for the championship. Thank you.
Carnera proved Joe could headline New York, and Levinsky proved he could own Chicago. Together, they made the upcoming fight feel inevitable and gigantic.
15 rounds for the heavyweight championship of the world. The world's heavyweight champion, Max Baer. His opponent, James J. Braddock.
And Braddock, maybe, he's pulled off one of the great comeback stories of all time.
The winner and new heavyweight champion.
Braddock's won it. Max Baer failing in his first defense.
After being toppled and losing the title to the 10-1 underdog James Braddock on June 13, 1935, Max Baer sought a fast route back to the top, and making an emphatic win over the unbeaten Joe Louis was the perfect rehabilitation. A devastating and erratic puncher, writers hailed Baer's right hand and physical strength, but lamented his playboy clowning streak, describing him as a $1 million body and a 10-cent brain.
Max Baer proved he could be a killer, but he'd rather be a clown.
He was shadowed by tragedy and the killer aura, as he was haunted by Frankie Campbell's death and by the damage Ernie Schaeff suffered before dying months after their 1932 fight. These episodes hardened his public image, even if he'd personally recoiled from it. Jacobs matched Joe with Baer for Yankee Stadium on September 24, 1935, in his Ex-Champions Tour, designed to convert hype into a title claim and a big gate. As soon as the 20th Century Sporting Club announced the date, demand surged, as Jacobs openly predicted the first $1 million gate since the Dempsey-Tunney fight. If Joe could beat the man who'd crushed both Max Schmeling and Primo Carnera, the last credible hurdle to Braddock's crown would be cleared.
Max Baer stands in my way for a chance for the title, so I'm going to shoot the Wex to beat him.
Baer with a star on his trunk. He's taller and bigger than Louis. The big question tonight is, can Baer's powerful right hand stop the Brown Bomber?
Now with a right to the jaw. He straightens Baer up in the corner, and at the bell. He again caught Baer. Louis gave him a left hook to the face, and at the bell, Nazi lost his head. Once more, third round coming up.
Baer's down. That last hard right to the jaw did it. Up at the count of 9. 3 lightning left hooks to the jaw. The bell saves Maxie for the second time. The first knockdown was a right to the jaw, the second from the left, and this one another right. This Louis packs dynamite in both hands.
7, 8, 9. Baer is not up, and Baer is on his knees. Your fight is all over.
Winner is Louis.
Joe Louis defeats former champion Max Baer in less than 12 minutes of fighting. The Bomber's 25th straight victory.
And Joe's proven that these last 8 or 10 fights, he's a bad boy. Tough boy. I couldn't get up, and not only that, I saw more than one Joe Louis in that ring. It looked like whole Harlem was there. This little ray of sunshine, you know, he couldn't go through those clouds. It was a hard fight. I was up against a very good man, and a man will go a long way.
After the fight, this is what Max Baer had to say. I would have struggled up once more, but when I get executed, people are going to have to pay more than $25 a seat to watch it.
Joe Louis, the Detroit Bomber, and his new bride, Marva Lewis, received a popular ovation following Joe's smashing victory over Max Baer. It was a major step in Joe Louis's brilliant climb to the heavyweight championship.
Joe didn't just beat Baer, he became the first to knock him out, erasing doubts about his chin and proving his power scales against the elite. A reporter tallied him as missing only 2 of more than 250 punches in 11 minutes and 50 seconds. With 2 ex-champs crushed in succession, Joe's claim on Braddock's title strengthened dramatically.
When would you rather fight, Joe, Braddock or Smelling? Braddock. You think Braddock will be easier? Yeah, much easier in the championship, too. That makes a difference. Yeah, that makes a lot of difference. Think Braddock will be harder than Baer? No, can't be much harder than Baer.
But before getting a shot at Braddock, he had to first go through the toughest test of his career.
Max, do you think that Joe will be able to hit you with that right hand he hit Polino with?
He won't get a chance. Max, what makes you think that you can lick him? Well, I saw him fight Polino. I saw a picture of Baer and Louis. I think I have a big chance to compete him.
Germany's Max Schmeling had been boxing since 1924 and had already fought 53 times before Joe even turned professional. Schmeling was the champion from 1930 to 1932 after he won the vacant title against Jack Sharkey via disqualification, the first heavyweight crown ever won on a foul. By mid-1936, Germany had passed the Nuremberg race laws, and with the Berlin Olympics taking place, they were sprinting into their propaganda moment. Schmeling did not join the Nazi Party and refused to drop his Jewish manager, Joe Jacobs. Yet, chief propagandist for the Nazi Party eagerly framed him as an exemplar of German strength whenever it served them. Although he stayed a top contender through the mid-30s with a reputation for patience, timing, and a textbook counter right hand, by 1936, the 31-year-old was considered to be over the hill by many. Jacobs wanted a marquee name to certify Joe as next in line for Braddock's title, and Schmeling's resume made him a suitable choice. The fight was widely regarded as a sensible tune-up fight for the undefeated phenom en route to gaining his crown.
Schmeling comes over. He's a 10-1 underdog. They're asking Joe Louis what round he's going to beat him in, not will you win, because they've got a whole page experts pick, 146 boxing writers. Nobody is picking Max Schmeling for that side of the page.
Which led Joe to make the first grave mistake of his career. The 21-year-old was sent soaring into national celebrity. When the average American was making less than $14,000 a year, Joe's purses exceeded $400,000, and he'd become boxing's bankable engine.
Money meant nothing to Joe. He hit the number in New York. It was like $8,000, and they paid him off in mid-afternoon. When Joe got back to the Teresa Hotel, he didn't have $100.
He'd be giving this guy $5, this guy $10, this guy $100 like that. He was giving out $100 just like a no.
Yeah, remember, he came from a family that had to share to survive. So when he had money, he shared his money. Many people criticized him and probably said he was generous to a fault.
And while Schmeling spent the months and weeks leading up to the fight studying and analyzing Joe on film, just as Gene Tunney once did in preparation for the Jack Dempsey fight, Joe's preparation was dotted with distractions.
After 4 weeks hard training, I am in very good condition. And all I have to do now is just to keep it as it is.
From watching Joe Louis in pictures and in action, have you discovered any particular weakness in the Brown Bomber?
Yes, I did. But I will tell.
He wouldn't listen to his trainer, Jack Blackburn, better known as Chappie. He found the game of golf, which is the wrong game for a fighter because you're holding your hands low, which is exactly what he was doing, his left hand.
My father was more concerned about the golf course than training for Max Schmeling. The muscles that he was using for golf are the wrong muscles for boxing.
There was your public Joe Louis and there was your private Joe Louis. The public Joe Louis was the opposite of Jack Johnson. Privately, however, there were some things there that were very similar to Jack Johnson.
He was out on the dance floor. There were even rumors that he was running around with women. All things that meant he wasn't training for this fight. He just overlooked it.
He was living large. He was making a ton of money.
Joe Louis was just getting seduced by the fame machine, and he really didn't prepare right for Max Schmeling.
Although Schmeling was a solid 10-1 underdog, he went into Yankee Stadium curiously confident of the win. For Joe, the stakes had never been higher. His rise carried pride and symbolism far beyond boxing, and a loss would sting nationally, not just locally.
15 rounds for heavyweight honors. There's the bell, and they step out. Schmeling looking confident.
In the second, Schmeling started keying off Joe's jab recovery, dropping in the first clean counter rights of the night.
Schmeling shot his right hand, and it hit Louis on the jaw and went off.
The fencing match continued in round 3, but round 4 witnessed the first major swing.
Schmeling comes forward, Louis meets him, and there.
1 minute into the round, Schmeling did what no other fighter had been able to do up until now.
Schmeling got over a right hand high on Louis's jaw that made Louis drop his head. Schmeling has sent Louis down. Louis is down. He did not wait for the count.
Schmeling landed the right for the first time in the second round. It was to be the first of 54 right hands that landed flush.
By the 5th, Schmeling was now in full command of the rhythm. Near the end of the round, Schmeling landed another booming right that left Joe all but out on his feet, with the bell probably saving the young fighter from a second knockdown. Schmeling continued to take over through the 6th round. Instead of a one-punch fluke, it was sustained punishment. The pattern continued in the following rounds. And by the 9th, Schmeling was landing punches almost at will, while a frustrated Joe resorted to low blows, elbows, and forearms, trying anything to shake Schmeling's rhythm.
And again, Louis, a left hook under the belt.
But the German had a strategy that he refused to reveal before that match.
And his plan was simply to wait for Louis to lower his left after he had jabbed. He would drop it. The second was to take anything and everything for the first rounds until he could throw that right. He held his left out, cupping it around his chin. So while Louis was jabbing him, he couldn't get to the right hand to him.
Now what Louis should have done, he should have shot it like that, with his right hand protecting his jaw here. Louis did like this. His jaw was exposed. He was always doing that, but no one else was able to take advantage of it because Louis was so fast.
But Schmeling was able to take full advantage of that, using it to score a shocking upset.
Schmeling got over 2 more hard rights to Louis's jaw and made Louis give ground, and there Schmeling straightened up Louis with hard rights and left to the jaw. He has puffed up Louis's left cheek, and Louis is down. Louis is down, hanging to the rope, hanging badly. He is very tired. He is blinking his eyes, shaking his head. The count is done. The fight is over. The fight is over. 2 minutes, 29 seconds, 12th round. Winner is Schmeling.
John Zeppelin Hindenburg, after battling with the Atlantic weather, landed at Frankfurt to bring Max Schmeling safely home. Max being now public hero number 1.
Und für das Ansehen des deutschen Volkes in Amerika gekämpft haben.
As he came out onto the balcony to acknowledge the cheers, his film star wife Annie Yonder also gave coy recognition.
What were your reactions in the first 3 rounds of that fight?
After the second round, I was very sure I had in my hand.
Beating Joe Louis was, in pure boxing terms, the cleanest, most satisfying win of Schmeling's career. A tactical masterpiece against a younger, feared puncher that turned him into an overnight national idol, as the Nazis used the victory to further spread their ideology. Despite never joining the Nazi Party, he still gave the regime what it wanted at times, such as nationalistic comments and telegrams of thanks to Hitler. Later, historians often call him an unwilling or ambivalent symbol of Aryan superiority, someone trying to straddle both worlds. But in America, the aftermath was vastly different.
Joe thought he was going to celebrate a knockout, but instead he could only celebrate a birthday.
Let us say happy birthday for Joe, his 22nd birthday.
The reaction to my father's defeat in 1936 was mixed. I think there were a lot of white Americans who didn't want Joe Louis to become the heavyweight champion.
People could not believe, did not want to believe that Louis had lost. In the white communities, there were many who said, yeah, he finally got it.
When Joe Louis's hometown, there were parades of cars celebrating Schmeling's victory by the white community.
And my mother tells me stories of how literally he would walk in Harlem with a very down head, and little black boys would walk up to him and whisper in his ear, Max Schmeling, Max Schmeling.
Already a Depression-era hero, black Americans on relief or WPA pay would crowd the streets every time Joe Louis fought, living vicariously through his wins, which made this loss a devastating blow to the black community. He was hammered for his lack of preparation, too much golf, Hollywood, and nightlife. But this criticism came from wounded pride rather than rejection. Weeks after the loss, Joe and Blackburn changed gears. No more distractions in camp, tighter curfews, stricter road work, and fewer hangers-on. In a radio interview, Joe said he'd prepare for every future fight like the title was at stake in every one of them. Mike Jacobs decided to keep him busy and keep the story moving toward a title shot rather than letting the Schmeling loss define him. Jacobs' plan was to pick opponents whose names would force people to treat Joe as a real contender again and strengthen Jacobs' hand in the heavyweight title politics. Another ex-heavyweight champion was Jack Sharkey, a veteran of the Dempsey era and the man who'd once won the title from Schmeling in their controversial 1932 rematch. Sharkey was past his best by 1936, but still carried the aura of a real ex-champion. Exactly the right kind of scalp to tell people Joe Louis wasn't broken.
Suddenly there's the bell that comes to the center of the ring. Jack's against the rope, bent over. Oh, Joe Louis, left, right to Sharky's head. Sharky comes back with a beautiful left. He's standing against the rope, going to take a terrific right and a knockdown. Sharky down, 7, 8, Jack getting up, 9, Jack up. Joe Louis charges across the ring. He lands a terrific left to his body. Hits Sharky with a right. Jack is weaving, takes a left to the chin, a left to the chin, a right to the head, and he's down. 2, 6, Jack's on one knee, hang on the rope. 8, 9, he's up. The third round, Louis very calmly, Jack coming out very strong, very confident looking, lands a straight left and a hard right hand, and Sharky's down against the rope. He swung over the lower rope to count. 8, Jack is up again. Arthur Donovan, the referee, wipes off his gloves and he faces the brown bomber who comes in charging with his left hand extended and tries with a hard right. Jack lands the left. Sharky is hit there he goes on the chin and he's fallen before us over the microphone for another knockdown. It doesn't look as though he may make it this time. He's 9, 10, and out.
The time, 1 minute, 2 seconds, third round. Winner is Louis.
The win moved Joe to 25-1, restoring his confidence and proving himself to skeptical fans, putting him a step closer to a title shot. It showed he could take a push, answer back, and close the show. All the things he'd failed to do against Schmeling. Through the rest of 1936 and the first half of 37, Joe added a further 6 crushing wins to his record, extending it to 31-1 with 27 knockouts, and bringing him closer than ever to a real shot at the title.
From stevedore to world champion, that's Jimmy Braddock, whose amazing comeback has startled the boxing world and whose sensational victory confirmed Max Bayer's own view before their fight.
I think he's a greatly underrated fighter.
Since upsetting Max Bayer in 1935, the Cinderella Man had not fought for 2 years due to chronic hand and arm problems, especially in his left arm, which was significantly weakened. Schmeling's win over Joe made him the most logical challenger for Braddock's title, and the fight was scheduled.
Well, I'm very happy to fight for the heavyweight championship again. And especially I'm glad to fight Jimmy Braddock.
I know the boxing fans are ready to wonder how Max Schmeling is going to do with me with his right hand in my coming fight.
But the same propaganda that elevated Schmeling also made him politically dangerous as a title challenger, as American promoters feared that if Schmeling got the title shot and won, the heavyweight championship of the world could be waved around by the Nazi regime as a trophy. But it was more than moral unease. It was also a business risk. The heavyweight title was American boxing's biggest asset. Letting it become a Nazi propaganda trophy and possibly vanish into a controlled German circuit was not in the U.S. promoter's interests. Although tickets were printed for the fight and a weigh-in was arranged, Braddock simply didn't show up for the fight, leading to cancellation.
I got a runaround. I spent more than $30,000 and went into training for June 3rd. I was in very good shape when I arrived here, but Jimmy didn't show up.
Behind the scenes, promoter Mike Jacobs and Braddock's manager, Joe Gould, had been working for months on a Braddock-Lewis deal instead. Braddock agreed to fight Joe on the condition that he received 10% of all Jacobs' promotional profits tied to Joe's bouts for the next 10 years, whether Braddock won or lost.
But the unfortunate consequence is that my father had to share that title with him financially for the rest of his life.
The deal went ahead, financially securing Braddock for life, giving Joe the chance to be the second black heavyweight title contender.
Well, I'll tell you, I honestly believe that I'll win by a knockout sometime around the 8th round.
Here in Chicago, the heavyweight boxing title is at stake. Will Joe Louis walk out of the ring as heavyweight champion of the world? We'll soon know.
And just await that bell, and here they come. And Louis is trying for a killing punch. Louis is punching hard. And Louis, he went down, but didn't stay down. And Braddock is pounding into the rope. Braddock is the man pushing the punch.
Jack Blackburn quipped, "You're not going to fool a whole stadium into thinking you didn't just get knocked down. Stay down, take your A count."
And Louis countered with a hard right to the face. Louis is turning loose with right and left. Most hardest right and most hardest left.
Slowly the fight turned. And literally, like most guys, he just battered Braddock down.
Now Braddock in front of the ring. And Louis gave him the Braddock is down. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And new champion of the world, Joe Louis.
Focal point of the camera barrage is a one-time Alabama cotton picker. Today, at the age of 23, the heavyweight champion of the world. Youngest in the history of boxing and second of his race ever to wear the crown. You've come a long way in your 3-year professional career. What do you think of Jimmy Braddock?
He was a tough fighter and a very good fighter. And I was glad when it was.
But the excitement in the fight arena was nothing compared to the whoopee in Harlem when the Brown Bomber floored his man in the 8th round to become the first colored heavyweight champion of the world since the days of Jack Johnson.
This began the longest heavyweight title reign in history. More than 11 years and 25 successful defenses for Black America. This coronation was euphoric, as Joe was now not only a symbol, but an actual black heavyweight champion in a world that had vowed never again.
And papers came out an hour after Joe Louis's fight. Tomorrow morning, it's paper extra, you know.
Well, Black America celebrated, and they just loved the fact that all of a sudden their champion was there.
It was a vindication that we were the strongest people in the world.
Even with the sport's most coveted prize, Joe couldn't fully revel in it.
There is no question that he did not feel internally that he was the heavyweight champion of the world when he defeated Braddock, because he still had this cloud of Max Schmeling's defeat a year earlier over him.
Well, Joe, how does it feel to wake up this morning the heavyweight champion of the world?
Oh, Junior, I felt fine. I felt like I can defend the next week sometime.
Before getting a chance to avenge his loss against Schmeling, Jacobs wanted to cash in on his new star with regular televised and radio-friendly defenses. And so, the first title defense and one of the most controversial fights in Joe's career was set.
British boxer Tommy Farr is in training for his world title fight with Joe Louis. And all America is watching the Welsh boy who was shot to the top with the swish of a rocket.
This has been a tough summer for we Britishers. We lost the Ryder Cup, the Davis Cup, and the America Cup. I hope to be one British mug that won't be taken.
And at Pompton Lakes, Joe Louis is training as never before.
Hard for my fight with Tommy Farr. I will be in the best of condition, for I want to keep the championship in the United States.
15 rounds for the heavyweight championship of the world.
Farr surprised everyone by meeting Joe head-on, hardly taking a backward step all night. From the opening bell, he attacked with vigor, reaching the champ with hard body shots, and continued the pace in the second, landing some dangerous hooks. Farr continued attacking, weathering a tough fifth round and winning the sixth. The eighth was his high point, however, as he nailed Joe with a clean left hand that briefly made the champ look vulnerable, sending a buzz through the stadium. But it wasn't a one-sided fight, as Joe generally had the cleaner, heavier punching, working the jab and right hand and steadily marking Farr up. And by the late rounds, the Welshman's face was smeared with blood around the eyes and nose.
The winner and still champion, Lewis.
There's the official confirmation. Joe Louis still the champion.
Many in the crowd disagreed as the decision was loudly booed, and a chunk of press, especially in Britain, felt that the fight was much closer, with some arguing Farr might have deserved a draw or a narrow win. Either way, it was Joe's first successful title defense, and it showed he could go a hard 15 rounds with a world-class, stubborn challenger, setting up the greatest victory of his career.
My father personally told me that he didn't feel or wouldn't have felt that he would have ever been the heavyweight champion had he not had a rematch with Max Schmeling.
By mid-1938, the fight sat right on top of escalating world tension. Hitler had already remilitarized Germany and annexed Austria in March. Nazi anti-Jewish policies and reports of persecution were widely known in the U.S., and American newspapers were beginning to frame Germany as the likely enemy in a coming war. And all of this tension fell on the shoulders of two men.
The greatest sociological event held in a ring in the history of boxing, might have been in the history of sports. It was a preview of the war to come. It was Max Schmeling representing, albeit he was never a Nazi, the Third Reich. He had gotten letters from Adolf Hitler exhorting him to go forward and win. Joe Louis had been at the White House, and Franklin Roosevelt had felt his muscles and said, Joe, we need these muscles for democracy.
When I finally got into the White House, he felt my muscles and said, these are the type of muscles we're going to need to beat Germany with.
European white woman came up to me and she said, you know, I was a Jew in Germany, and I wanted you to know every Jew in Germany was rooting for Joe Louis. The Jews wanted Joe Louis to defeat Max Schmeling. Even though we were Germans, we were rooting for your dad.
You had pickets outside. There were calls not to have this fight because Schmeling had already beaten Louis 2 years earlier. And the fear was Schmeling would win and take the title home to Germany.
Many of the white people in the South didn't want to see Joe Louis win.
It was the biggest pre-fight build-up you ever heard. Thousands of people would come just to watch him spar.
Somebody asked him before the fight, Joe, how do you feel? Joe said, man, I'm scared. I'm scared I'm going to kill him.
Max, we expect to knock Louis out.
And after all, I didn't come over for fun.
What round are you going to knock him out in?
Now you come over and see the fight.
People think that I'm going to the ring gun shy. Why should I go into the ring gun shy when Smelling's 2 years older and I'm 2 years smarter in boxing? I see no reason why Smelling thinks that he should regain his title. I will take care of him on night June the 22nd.
The streets were eerily quiet, no cars. It was like a scene after the atom bomb, you know. And this was duplicated in every large city, by the way.
There's that one great cartoon where they show the globe sitting on a ring looking at the fight, and the entire world's focus was on this fight. That's true. This fight was the biggest fight in the history of the world.
This is the feature attraction, 15 rounds for the world's heavyweight championship.
When Schmeling was walking down to the fight, they were throwing apples, bananas, rocks, everything at him.
I was called bad names and I was torn with papers and cups and cigarette cases and all these things.
The entire world is waiting for the result of this enormously publicized heavyweight championship fight. Champion Joe Louis wants this victory desperately.
Louis came out, and this time, instead of waiting to count, he attacked.
I don't think there's ever been a more ferocious single minute in the ring than the beginning of that fight.
An explosive right to the jaw hurts Max Schmeling. Joe Louis all over Max Schmeling here in round one.
He trapped Schmeling on the ropes. Schmeling turned his torso to avoid a right hand, and Louis lands the punch in the middle of his back, and he breaks two vertebrae. Schmeling screamed in pain like a wounded animal.
I never heard a man scream and holler like he did. Oh no! Oh no! And holding his hands up, oh no!
You could hear that scream, according to the onlookers, 4 and 5 rows deep. It was a horrific scream.
I was paralyzed, you know. My hand dropped. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move.
Ripping punches to the head. Joe steps back. A dynamite right to the jaw, and Schmeling goes down here in the first round. Max is up at the count of 2. Lewis moves in. Ripping punches by the Brown Bomber send Schmeling down again. Crushing right explodes off Schmeling's jaw, and Max goes down for the 3rd time.
And then you see the towel being thrown in by Schmeling's corner, and referee Arthur Donovan just picks it up and throws it back because he insists he is in control of the fight. The corner cannot give it up. He must.
It doesn't look like Schmeling's gonna make it. It's all over. Joe Louis electrifies the boxing world with his magnificent first round devastating knockout over Max Schmeling.
2 minutes, 4 seconds. First round, the winner and still champion, Joe Louis.
I waited 2 years for the revenge, and now I have it.
Joe, I want to congratulate you on your great victory tonight. You're a great champion. I predict you to knock him out in 1 round, and you've done it.
It was Mardi Gras. It was Liberation Day, Paris. It was 4th of July. It was everything.
Joe Louis was the hero of the hour, not just to Black America, but to all America. For the first time in the history of the U.S., the national hero was a black man.
Joe Louis transcended the race and transcended being the heavyweight champion of the world to an individual who gave hope to an entire generation of Americans and many people throughout the world as well.
Joe Louis spoke for the people, not boxing people, not African Americans, not white, the people.
And that was when Jimmy Cannon wrote his classic line, Joe Louis is a credit to his race, the human race.
In Germany, however, it was a total contrast. The radio broadcast to Germany was cut off almost immediately after the stoppage.
So this was a very sad night. I had so much pain in the back and was brought into the hospital. They made the same night, they made an X-ray. They found that the backbone was broken twice. I was laying in the hospital for 10 days in New York, and then I was brought by an ambulance car to the ship, went back to Germany, and in Germany I was laying for another 6 weeks. And I still have feeling. If the weather gets bad, I still have some feeling in the back, you know.
Hitler, already unhappy that Schmeling had never joined the party, drafted him into paratrooper service despite being technically beyond normal draft age. A dangerous posting some historians see as punishment for refusing to be a loyal Nazi figurehead. Despite their rivalry in the ring, the pair later struck up a genuine friendship that lasted the rest of their lives. Schmeling even helped pay for Joe's funeral. Max lived to 99 and later said that if he had one wish, it would be that Joe Louis were still alive and that they were still friends. Following the win, Joe didn't just sit on the belt. Mike Jacobs understood exactly what he had and kept him astonishingly busy throughout the late 1930s, early 40s, lining up one challenger after another, a schedule that writers called his Bum of the Month Club.
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I went on a Bum of the Month tour.
Bum of the month? I would have been a bum compared to you.
Well, you'll be on the tour.
The city that I fought most of the fighters in, they were the top fighter in that city. We didn't get but $20, $15. We didn't try to charge the public no $100 for no C stuff, and I got maybe $20,000, $30,000 for the fight.
In the next 29 months, Joe would go on to defend his title 13 times, fighting guys like LL Cool J's uncle, John Henry Lewis, Jack Roper, Arturo Godoy, two-ton Tony Galento, and Max Bayer's brother, Buddy Bayer. But the more he fought, the more he unknowingly created a vacuum of debt which would bite him down the line.
Mike Jacobs could see the war on the horizon. And I think Jacobs wanted to make as much money from Joe Louis as possible. One of the bums of the month, who wasn't a bum, was the great Pittsburgh fighter Billy Conn.
The winner and new world light heavyweight champion, Billy Conn.
Before becoming the world light heavyweight champion in 1939, the Pittsburgh Kid had amassed a reputation as a fast, slick boxer. Not a huge puncher, but great feet, sharp jab, good chin, clever boxing, and the nerve to fight anyone. Many of his fights went the distance, as he usually won on points rather than knockouts. But in 1941, he decided to give up the light heavyweight title specifically so he could pursue Joe Louis and the heavyweight championship, in what many historians call Joe's last great fight.
Jimmy Braddock, the ex-champ, drops by to get the real lowdown.
Well, how are you going to bring that title back to the Irish, Phil? Well, I'll bring it back with this left hand, Jim, and this.
I guess Billy must have been nervous. He slipped. He fell down.
It's down, but it's not from a punch. He jabbed at Louis and slipped.
My dad, in the first round, looked like he was running for his life. Second round, more of the same thing. Then Louis started to hit him with some really good shots, and people were just, it's only a matter of time. It's just another one of his fights, another bum of the month.
And for 12 rounds, after giving away maybe the first 3 out of sheer fright, then figuring he could handle a bigger Joe Louis, jab, move, clinched, in and out, in and out. In fact, in the 12th round, he hurt the bejabbers out of Louis, lifted his foot from the canvas with a left, right, and uppercut. Joe Louis goes to his corner, and his trainer, Jack Blackburn, says, "Chappie, how do you feel?" He said, "That punch hurt." He says, "You need a knockout. You can't win without a knockout. Get him."
And Billy Conn went back to his corner and he said, "Hey, I can beat this guy." Now his corner's telling Billy, wait a minute. You're ahead on every judge's card. Just last 15th round. Get to the 15th round, you're the heavyweight champion.
Billy Conn got cocky, and instead of going for the decision, he tried to knock Joe Louis out. He began to try to slug with Joe Louis.
Bad decision.
Conn drops the left hook. He's railing around the ring. Louis puts the left to the right to the jaw. And Conn is down from a right cross to the jaw. Taking the count. 9. He's getting up. The referee says it's all over. The referee says it's all over. The bout is stopped. The winner and still champion, Joe Louis.
I guess I had too much to win for it, and I tried to knock him out. Otherwise, I don't want easy.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special news bulletin. The White House has just announced that the Japanese are attacking military and naval establishments on the island of Oahu.
The White House announces Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
Japan has announced a formal declaration of war against both the United States and Britain.
Even before Pearl Harbor, talk of Joe's future was already tinged with questions about war, duty, and retirement, not just title defenses. But after the Japanese attack, Joe felt personally hit. "Hell, this is my country," he said. "Don't come around sneaking up and attacking it. If a fighter had done that to me, I would have smashed him." Jacobs quickly saw a way to keep boxing alive and look patriotic, a charity title defense. He asked if Joe would defend his title with a full purse going to the Navy Relief Society. Although the U.S. Navy was one of the most segregated and racist institutions in the country, limiting black men to steward and messman roles, Joe immediately agreed, even when Jacobs stressed he wouldn't see a cent of the purse.
Tell me, Joe, how's about this working for nothing? How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not working for nothing. I'm working for my country, and I think that's about the greatest piece of work that anybody can do.
You're turning over an awful lot of money.
We all turn over a whole lot for this country at this time.
The bout was a rematch against Buddy Bear, who'd given Joe a rough night in their first meeting. This time, Joe had him down 3 times in a savage, one-sided beatdown before knocking him out in the first round. Joe donated his entire net purse, about $49,000, to Navy Relief, and this was the first piece of the domino to fall that would eventually bring the Brown Bombers' financial empire crumbling down. Just days after the Bear fight, Joe was notified to report for induction. And although he could have claimed deferment from military service as the sole support of his mother and his wife, he believed that it was his duty to join at a private's pay of $21 a month.
Joe Louis, American soldier. Anxious to get into Army uniform, the heavyweight champ rushes from the prize ring where he KO'd Buddy Bear in 1 round to Fort J, New York.
My name is Joe Louis Barrow.
What's your occupation?
Fighter, and let's get at them jobs.
He went into the entertainment division. I mean, there wasn't any real intention of seeing him out on the front lines. He was somebody who was there for morale purposes.
This is an official message from the War Department. I want you to meet one of the greatest fighters of all time, Sergeant Joe Louis, heavyweight champion of the world. I wish I could talk face to face to all you folks who are waiting for the war. I got an interesting job in this Army. I go around to Army camp and give boxing exhibition. Then I talk to our soldiers about training. I've gone into some hard fights, but these soldiers are going into the toughest fight of all. They got to be good. Fighting is their job and they don't complain. Working is your job, so work hard.
He volunteered for the Army. He conducted some 96 expeditions and entertained some 3 million troops, because that's what he could do to support the war issue. Those are the kind of things that Joe Louis did to prove to America that Black Americans could make sacrifices even though they could not experience the opportunities of this country.
I've only done what any red-blood American would do.
Some press agent, spin doctor, told him to say, "We're going to win because God is on our side." And somehow he screwed it up, but made it better.
We're going to do our part, and we will win because we are on God's side. Thank you.
He went around with Sugar Ray Robinson and made sure that the crowds of soldiers were integrated where he and Ray Robinson boxed exhibitions. He was conscious of segregation in 1942.
Whenever he saw Black troops being segregated against, he picked up the phone and called and said, "It's not right down here."
Joe routinely used his influence to help Black soldiers who were being stonewalled by racism. In one instance, he interceded on behalf of another Black soldier. Jackie Robinson had allegedly struck an officer who'd hurled a racial slur at him. But before military justice could have its way, Joe persuaded the base commander to dismiss the matter, and Robinson was allowed to finish officer candidate school. Even before Robinson broke baseball's color line, Joe Louis had helped him break the Army's internal color line.
So without Joe Louis, there would not have been a Jackie Robinson in more ways than one.
2 title defenses, around 100 exhibition bouts, 2 military films, and nearly 4 years later, Joe received the Legion of Merit Medal and was eligible for immediate discharge. But the transition to civilian life was anything but easy. In many ways, it was the beginning of the end for him. Since the 1930s, he had a brain trust: John Roxborough, Julian Black, and Jack Blackburn. Together, they managed his career, polished his style, and protected his public image. But by the time he left the Army, the brain trust was no more. 3 years earlier, Blackburn, the man who understood his style and psychology, had died of a heart attack, which deeply affected Joe. When the dirt went down on that coffin, "I knew my life would never be the same again," he said.
Jack Blackburn was probably the most significant influence in my father's life. He literally was like a father figure to my dad. He really loved Joe Louis in such a way that only a father-son relationship can be there.
Almost at the same moment, he lost the other key pillar of his early success, the Detroit numbers king, John Roxborough, who first spotted Joe in an amateur gym and guided him into the pros. John and 25 other officials and gamblers were convicted in a huge gambling and bribery scandal around the city's numbers racket and were sent to prison for 2 years. Julian Black, the other co-manager, was hit in a different way. A tax evasion case against him was eventually dismissed, but the publicity destroyed much of his business, and he drifted out of the picture. And to make matters worse, Joe divorced his wife Marva, who took 25% of his future purses rather than a one-time payout, and an IRS bill from the war years was lurking in the background, a ticking time bomb now in the 6 figures that would soon bring the champ's downfall.
In 1942, he fought a fight for the Navy relief. He fought a fight for Army relief, donated his purses. And then for some reason that nobody understands, somebody prepared his income tax and marked down the entire purse he should have gotten as earnings rather than donations. So now he's taxed on that and the interest on the penalties on the tax, and the meter runs. And nobody corrects it, either on the government side or on his side. From that moment on, Joe Louis was in tax trouble.
There's no question that when my father was in the war, he continued to spend at the same rate that he did when he was fighting.
He owes $250,000 to Mike Jacobs because he's been borrowing from Mike Jacobs all during the war because he can't fight.
Instead of paying his taxes, accountant Ted Jones advised him to wait, let the bill grow, and then negotiate a deal with the IRS. Joe agreed and borrowed more money from Mike Jacobs, digging the hole deeper. And with his biggest payday the following year, things were about to get even worse. Since their classic fight in 1941, attempts to make a Lewis-Kahn rematch were blocked twice before. Once when Kahn broke his hand on his father-in-law's head, and again when War Secretary Henry Stimson vetoed a wartime match because both fighters were servicemen and would earn unseemingly money. With both men finally back to civilian life, Mike Jacobs booked June 19, 1946, exactly 5 years to the day after the first Lewis-Kahn fight at Yankee Stadium. Heading into the rematch, neither man was the same as he once was before the war. Joe's own son described his father at the start of the training for the rematch as 240 pounds with puffy jowls, soft muscles, and badly out of condition. War and age have also made him less fanatical about training, more relaxed, more talkative with the press, playing golf, staying up late when show business types visit camp. He was still serious, but not the same haunted, hungry kid he was in the 1930s.
In New York City, ex-soldiers Billy Kahn and Joe Louis get a physical examination for their coming heavyweight championship fight late in June. At this ceremony, they're quite friendly, but when the bell rings for the first big bout since the war, they'll come out fighting.
I've been working hard for this coming fight with Billy Kahn for June 19th. I'm getting in good condition. I'm down to my fighting weight now, and I hope to knock him out.
Well, I'm training real hard for this fight with Louis, and I hope to be in great shape. I understand that Louis hopes to knock me out this time. Well, I think that's just wishful thinking.
15 rounds duration for the heavyweight championship of the world.
We're waiting the bell. Here it is, Don Dunphy.
Joe plodded forward behind his jab, while Kahn mostly backed up, rarely letting his hands go. It was clear that age and inactivity had dimmed Kahn's skills, and while Joe wasn't the sparkling athlete of 1938, he was still clearly the better man. For 7 rounds, it looked as if Kahn was trying to make up for the 13th round mistake of the first fight by staying away at all costs. He attempted few serious punches and landed almost none of consequence before Joe closed the show in the 8th round.
They put the left down and Kahn is covered. And a right to the shot, and a left up to the stand. Kahn is down, and it's back. 7, he's trying to get up. 8, 9, and it's all over. Kahn is knocked out. Joe Louis knocks out Billy Kahn.
In a very knockout, and still the heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis.
The crowd and media were underwhelmed. Expectations had been sky high, but the fight itself was a disappointment by any standards.
Probably the worst heavyweight championship fight fought by either of them, if not ever in history. They had nothing. Timing was off. Timing was off less for Louis than for Kahn.
Made up my mind last night after that terrible fight that it's time to quit.
Well, last night I felt good as ever, and just as sharp where I felt last night. I haven't fight for a long time yet.
After the richest night of his life, Joe's purse of $625,000 evaporated as quickly as it came. With Jacob's loan, IRS pressure, Marva's cut, and his own generosity, every time Joe got a fight, he already owed the money. With Kahn out of the picture and no real demand for a third fight, Jacobs and Joe's new manager, Marshall Miles, needed another opponent. They settled on Tammy Muriello, a tough, stocky Bronx Italian with a 69-7-1 record and an ongoing 12-fight winning streak. He'd just beaten British hero Bruce Woodcock, Britain's big hope, in a final eliminator that both U.S. commissions recognized as deciding the right to challenge Louis.
Tammy, shown here training, has been blasting everyone out with a lightning-sharp right hand to the jaw. Tammy says he's got a chance, as Joe is now 33 years old, and it's acknowledged that he's slowed down considerably. Lewis comes out facing camera. Blistering right to the jaw sends Lewis against the ropes. Joe holds on. A crushing lift by Joe Louis, and Muriello is down. What a beginning to this World Heavyweight Championship fight. A right, a crisp left, and down goes Muriello for the second time. It's all over. A first-round knockout for Joe Louis.
This was considered the last pure brown bomber demolition of a top contender. After Muriello, Joe didn't rush into another big title defense. He spent late 1946 and much of 1947 on a long exhibition tour across the US, South America, and Mexico, typically picking up about $10,000 a city plus expenses. Despite his financial trouble and the IRS hovering, he still lived at large and traveled around Europe with Marva, whom he remarried. Besides lavish spending and trying to keep up with the IRS bill, Joe embarked on numerous business ventures throughout the mid-40s onwards. He launched the Joe Louis Enterprise umbrella, which included a restaurant and bar in Harlem, Joe Louis Punch soft drink, a milk company, a bread company, and a Chicago nightclub. These stints mostly failed, often because he backed friends or just got bored. He was running out of opponents, money, and time. Around the same time, Mike Jacobs fell seriously ill and handed the promotional reins to his cousin, Sol Strauss, a lawyer with limited fight game experience who was suddenly tasked with finding a new opponent for a champion who had basically cleared out the division. So Strauss was forced to reach down to the sport's forgotten veteran and Joe's old sparring partner for the next challenger. This choice didn't cause any great swell of excitement, but Jersey Joe Walcott's wins over Joe Boxey, Jimmy Bivens, Leoma, and Joey Maxim made him a credible, if unglamorous, option. But this would go down as the most controversial fight in the Bomber's career.
Joe Louis, World Heavyweight Champion, put in his final training at Pompton Lakes, New Jersey, before defending his title for the 24th occasion. He's reported as saying that the contender was second-rate, and he was confident of finishing him off in quick time.
15 rounds for the heavyweight championship of the world.
Despite going in the fight as a 10-1 underdog, 33-year-old Walcott appeared sharp and primed for a tough fight. He came out crafty and fearless, with lots of jabs and feints. Late in round one, after a series of left jabs and hooks, he nailed Louis with a short right to the jaw and dropped him. Joe was up at 2, more embarrassed than hurt, as the garden exploded. He spent rounds 2 and 3 chasing and missing, throwing wild, anxious punches at a moving target, and everyone could see that he was flat and uninspired. Walcott, now well ahead on points, went about cleanly outboxing Louis with clever footwork, a stinging jab, and a powerful right hand. Winning round after round while Louis looked slow. He could see openings, but his reflexes wouldn't let his hands go in time.
Yes, my manager and my trainers told me that just to stay away and box and don't get in trouble. You can't lose the fight. You've at least won 10 out of the 15 rounds.
At the bell after the 15th round, most observers thought Walcott had won comfortably. Disgusted at his performance, Joe himself left the ring before the announcement.
Now, there are a lot of stories that you thought that you might have been disgusted at yourself.
I was disgusted at myself. That's why I want to go out the ring.
The winner by majority vote, Joe Louis.
The building exploded in boos following the announcement as the 18,000 in attendance cheered Walcott, and a poll of 40 ringside writers had 24 scoring for Walcott, 16 for Louis.
When they called him back in the ring and they gave him the decision, he grabbed me about both hands and he said to me, "I'm sorry, Joe."
Well, Joe Louis's first fight against Jersey Joe Walcott showed us that he was no longer the Joe Louis of story and song and youth.
We were listening to the fight on the radio, and I thought he was going to be beat. And I would go between rounds to my bed and cry.
When the fight was over, I wanted to cry. I just wanted to cry.
For the first time in his life, probably, Louis was booed. And so that was a signal that it was the beginning of the last act of Joe Louis's professional life.
This commission has no desire to interfere with the exercise of discretion and judgment of competent appointed officials. Joe Louis has always been a true sportsman, and the New York Commission assumes he will give Joe Walcott another chance at the championship.
Here's Jersey Joe Walcott in training at Glenlock, the third man ever to go the whole distance with Louis. He claimed to have won. Anyway, there's to be a return fight.
15 rounds for the heavyweight championship of the world.
In a largely dull, tactical fight, Louis planned to box and wait for Walcott to tire, while Walcott planned to stay outside and frustrate Louis, inviting him to overreach. In the third, in an echo of the first fight, Walcott again dropped Louis onto his haunches.
Jersey Joe, through the first 5 rounds, the fight seems to be going according to your plan?
Yes.
What was the strategy?
To move in and slip, counterpunch, move out, feint, step in and out.
In the 11th round, Walcott made the fatal choice that Kahn had made in 1941. He moved to the ropes, daring Louis to hit him.
And Walcott is inside around the rope. Louis fighting to the right from the jaw. Left hook to the head. Walcott takes the right and the left to the body. Louis has him. There he had him in round 9 as well. And then Walcott fights over the left and the right to the jaw. He misses the right. A left hook to the head. Louis fights him to the right and the left to the jaw. And Walcott is down. Walcott is down. Walcott is trying to get up.
I enjoyed the fight. I think the fight was much better than it was the last time. Well, I'd like to say again that I retired. Tonight was my last fight. So thank you very much.
Joe Louis, longest reigning monarch in heavyweight boxing history, retires undefeated just shy of his 35th birthday.
I've defended my championship 25 times. I've been told to retire now.
Is there any chance that you might get tired of promoting one of these days and go back to the ring?
No, I don't think I'll get tired of promoting because I don't get hit as a promoter.
But instead of enjoying his retirement, Joe's real decline was only about to begin. His marriage to Marva was crumbling again as they divorced for the second and final time in February 1949. Meanwhile, the tax situation was quietly deteriorating. For the 1946 Morello purse, Joe's team tried a shift-it-to-next-year tax trick. The IRS audited and disallowed the ploy, adding back taxes, penalties, and interest, and his $255,000 purse from the Walcott rematch was eaten by deductions and legal obligations. No taxes were ever withheld from Joe's purses. He'd spent for years as if it were all his. And now the auditor was saying, pay everything you should have paid since the mid-1930s, plus interest. By 1950, the government slapped a lien on him, froze revenues, and wouldn't let him sell anything unless all proceeds went to the IRS. Exhibitions were no longer enough. They were just feeding the interest. Congressional allies tried to get a special bill passed to forgive the tax debt because of Joe's wartime fundraising and patriotic service, but it failed. The IRS would only negotiate a payment plan. They still wanted their money. With all the business ventures, he started to outrun the IRS crumbling and his tax bill swelling to over $500,000 with continued interest. He had no choice but to return to the one business he really knew.
And the new heavyweight champion of the world,
After he beat Walcott for the vacant heavyweight title, the International Boxing Council quickly realized that the new champ, Ushered Charles, wasn't drawing crowds. Charles was talented, but lacked Joe's star power. His title defenses were financial duds, with one defense against Freddie Bashore in Buffalo drawing only 6,298 fans and setting a record-low heavyweight title gate. Promoters Jim Norris and Arthur Wirtz saw the obvious. If you want a gate, you need Joe Louis. They leaned on him, convincing him that he could beat this guy Charles off the couch, and that he'd be the first heavyweight ever to regain the title. The old ring truism was, they never come back. Every previous heavyweight legend who tried had failed. Joe knew this, but he also knew that no other fighter ever had his long, dominant reign, and if anyone could break the curse and reclaim the crown at 36, maybe it was him.
Ushered Charles, heavyweight champion of the world in 47 states, goes into final training for his title bout with Joe Louis. Charles, who will receive 20%, becomes the first champion to accept the short end of the purse. At Pompton Lakes, Joe Louis, who voluntarily gave up the crown 19 months ago, tunes up to win it back. The Brown Bomber was one of the greatest. Whether at 36 he still retains enough stuff to put away the 29-year-old Charles is a question to be answered in the ring.
15 rounds for the heavyweight championship of the world.
The crowd was much smaller than expected, roughly less than 22,000. Hurt by national TV coverage and Charles's lukewarm appeal, the live gate was well below what a Joe Louis title fight once guaranteed. The fight itself wasn't any better. Joe stalked, but Charles was too quick, darting in and out, jabbing, hooking, and outmaneuvering the heavier man. Joe managed to bruise Charles's eye, but took the worst of it. Cuts over both eyes, a bleeding nose, and so spent between rounds that his corner had to lift him off the stool for the last round.
Winner by unanimous decision and heavyweight champion of the world, Ushered Charles.
Joe Louis is going out of the ring, and I haven't been able to get him.
Joe cried in the dressing room and told reporters, "I've done the best I can. I'll never fight again."
Best fighters of them all reaches the end of the trail. At 36, attempting a comeback after retiring, Joe Louis finally bows in defeat. The victor is Ushered Charles, who won a unanimous 15-round decision to become America's undisputed heavyweight champion.
Financially, though, the math still didn't work. Joe's purse was substantial, $100,000 to $190,000, depending on the source, but nowhere near enough to wipe out the debt, especially with the IRS grabbing and taxing everything. So within weeks of vowing to retire, he understood he had to keep fighting. Not out of ambition, but because the IRS had said, "Nice try, keep paying." With the title gone and the debt still looming, Joe and the IBC mapped out a new strategy. Fight often against beatable but respectable men to generate steady purses to chip away at the IRS bill and prove he was still a top contender, setting up either a rematch with Charles or a shot at whoever held the belt. After a string of 8 wins for the next 9 months, including knocking out Lisa Vold in 6 rounds, fans and some journalists started to believe again that maybe he could beat Charles in a rematch. But 4 weeks later, the script flipped. 37-year-old Jersey Joe Walcott finally won the title by knocking out Ushered Charles in the 7th round. Suddenly, the champion was a man Joe had already beaten twice. Perfect on paper, but Walcott was in no hurry to risk his brand new crown against a rejuvenated Louis, whom he'd probably lose to again. The carefully constructed Louis-Charles II payoff vanished, and all Joe could do was keep fighting and hope.
The Brockton Bomber has history on his side in the ring, as well as the most powerful right hand in the annals of boxing. He's been up against classy boxers before. All it takes is that one punch.
4 years into his pro career, with a 37-0 record and 32 knockouts, Rocky Marciano was the new heavyweight sensation, fresh off wins over Roland Lastarza and Rex Lane. Considered by many to be the era's White Hope and the new Jack Dempsey, the Brockton Blockbuster was a TV-friendly slugger whose rise promoters were eager to capitalize on. Ushered Charles had struggled at the box office, and Walcott was competent, but he was no Joe Louis. So matching the beloved old champion with the unbeatable slugger was a perfect Generations Collide sell. Joe was promised a $300,000 minimum guarantee, or 80% of the proceeds, far more than the $15,000 purses he was getting for his other comeback bouts, which made accepting the fight a no-brainer. Joe needed the money badly and believed he could outbox the crude brawler.
He didn't want to take the fight. Joe Louis had to beg him to take the fight. It's the only way that he can make some money.
His handlers were worried, but he eventually overruled them, bringing his career to a depressing close.
And here's Joe ready for a workout. He was 37 and a half years old. Joe has long arms, as you can see. His reach is 76 inches. 9 inches more than Rocky's 67. Rocky stands 5 feet 11, 3 inches shorter than Joe Louis. His weight going into the big fight was 184, nearly 29 pounds lighter than Joe. He was 27 years at the time, more than 10 years the Bomber's junior, but 11 years shy his opponent's ring experience. The slight favorite at fight time was not Rocky Marciano, but Joe Louis. Joe's prediction? He'll win over Marciano by a knockout. Rocky said, "I never predict I'll knock anybody out, but I'm confident, very confident I'll win."
I remember specifically talking to my father when he came to Chicago. And I said, "Why are you fighting again?" He says, "I have to." I said, "Well, is it your last fight?" He says, "Yes, it's my last fight."
October 26, 1951, Madison Square Garden. The big question tonight, can the ex-champion come back? He's the slight favorite.
I was sitting in the audience, and here's my brother in the ring, and I felt for Joe Louis. Rocky felt for Joe Louis.
Well, Joe Louis was fighting clearly just for the money. He was fighting a much younger man. He had lost most of his skills, and we were seeing a shell of what Joe Louis had been.
Here we have a great champion on his way down, meeting a blockbusting youngster on his way up.
And Joe is a helpless figure. He looks like one of those bums he used to knock out.
Finally, in the 8th round, Louis went down twice.
A blazing right. Louis sailed through the ropes.
And the referee, Ruby Goldstein, stopped the count at 8. He did not want to count out Joe Louis.
Saddest moment I've ever experienced in boxing. Joe Louis lying outside the ropes, head being held by one of the writers. It was over. An era was over.
This is the second time in his career he was knocked out.
Almost nobody enjoyed seeing Joe beaten like that, but everybody knew it was going to happen if he kept fighting. This time, retirement wasn't just his choice. State commissions began to refuse him a license, as he was deemed too great a name and too great a former champion to be allowed to take chances. His official record closed at 66-3, and while he was done for good this time, the IRS still wasn't done with him. Through the 1950s, the bill kept ballooning, with interest and penalties reaching its peak in 1962 when it was calculated at roughly $1.3 million, the equivalent of about $13 million in today's money. The IRS treated every new dollar Joe made like fresh meat. Any sizable paycheck, exhibitions, promotions, or TV money drew an immediate garnishment. When his mother, Lily, died in 1953, they took the $667 she left for him. Not long after, they also seized the trust funds that his ex-wife Marva had set up for their children. And in 1956, when he and his second wife, Rose Morgan, went on the TV game show High Finance and won $60,000, the IRS immediately stepped in, taking Joe's entire half of the money. The failure of almost every business venture he'd started made promoter Ray Tabani's $100,000 to go on the wrestling circuit all the more enticing.
I stopped him from wrestling. I said, "Joe, you can't wrestle." I said, "That's just like asking the President of the United States to wash dishes."
I can't imagine in any way, shape, or form that it wasn't humiliating to him or demeaning to him. But Joe Louis did it. And he did it because he had an obligation.
It was horrible. The media crucified him.
There has been quite a bit of criticism about it in the newspapers. I know that you have read it, and I'd like to know how you feel about it.
No, don't everyone agree with my idea of what I've done, but I'm sure that more people do agree with me than the ones who don't.
When I asked him once, "How do you feel the way they're talking about you being a wrestler after having been such a great heavyweight champion of the world?" He said, "Daddy, it beats stealing."
But the run was as short as it was ugly. Tag teamed with 320-pound cowboy Rocky Lee, Joe took a badly mistimed bump. Lee landed on him when Joe wasn't set, breaking several ribs and causing a cardiac contusion, damage to the heart muscle itself.
My mind had been made up whether I would go back to wrestling or not. I know I would roughly wrestle back again, that I'm sure.
Full-on wrestling ended right there. After that, he only refereed matches for about $500 a night. Decent money for a regular guy. useless against a 7-figure tax bill. By his own admission, in 1956, he didn't even know the exact total he owed anymore. The government kept sending new bills, and he even doubted the IRS could pin an exact figure.
You've had some income tax problems. How are you getting along?
On my president's tax, I'm getting along good. So the back tax, but I'm not doing so good on.
When he tried to settle, the IRS prolonged that settlement, and the meter kept running and running and running.
And then they used them as a symbol to discourage other taxpayers. You know, we got this guy, you're next.
You had to feel bitter, misused. It is one of the permanent stains on America that this phenomenal hero who did so much for his country would then be hurt and destroyed in such a fashion.
One thing you can never say about Joe, and that is that he had criminal intent to defraud the United States of America, and to treat him like a common criminal is criminal in and of itself.
Finally, in 1962, the IRS realized Joe would never be able to pay the full amount. So they agreed to a payment plan and stopped the constant harassment, letting him have a fixed amount to live on while the official debt still sat on the books. That compromise cleared just enough space for the next chapter in his life, one that wasn't any kinder to him. By the late 1960s, Joe was out of the ring but still fighting in his head. With the death of his mother, brother, and the collapse of his marriage, he was mentally at loose ends. Depressed and unsure what he was supposed to be once the cheers stopped, he slid into drugs and paranoia.
At that time, he was a changed person. He was drinking brandy, smoking, and then became addicted to cocaine.
He just ran his life out with really no direction in life.
He became basically a lost person.
He got so paranoid and crazy, he thought that when you sneezed, it was the mafia making a signal to kill you.
He used to go in his room and seal up the air-conditioned ducts because he said that they was out to poison him.
I walked in to see him, and the room was dark. All the shades were drawn. He had taken my college desk lamp and totally unscrewed it. I said, "What did you do to my lamp?" He says, "They were listening to me."
He was smearing mayonnaise on windows so that FBI rays would not come through and pick up the thoughts in his brain. This was a man who was descending into mental illness, as had his father.
Joe was committed to a Denver psychiatric hospital by Joe Jr.
When the sheriff's department went to take him to the hospital, he said, "Why are you here?" "Well, we've got this document." He said, "Let me see this document." "Well, who's that signature?" "Well, that's your son's signature." And when he saw me later, it was basically said, "Why did you do this? Why didn't you come talk to me about it?" And I said, "Well, you need help." You know, this relationship that was so fragile anyway, because I didn't see him very often, was just for me gone forever.
After about 5 months, he was released on medication and day treatment. Not long after, an old Army buddy named Ash Resnick came calling. Resnick was now an executive at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas and offered Joe something he hadn't had in years, a place where being Joe Louis still meant something. That invitation is what pulled him for good toward Vegas.
Well, I'm the host. Right. Shake hands. But I've been with the hotel 6 years. I'm enjoying my stay in with the hotel.
He became a greeter in Las Vegas, which might seem pathetic to some people, but really was quite wonderful for him.
Realities are Joe Louis loved Las Vegas. Las Vegas gave Joe Louis an opportunity to rekindle his celebrity.
People were dying to meet him and shake his hand, and Joe loved to do it.
When he came to Caesars, we was working in the same pit together. He was a greeter, but he didn't do too much greeting. He would go to the crap table, and people would just give him money just to gamble with him. And if he won, he kept the money.
Here he is in the casino, and he's like the manservant, the house guy, like a doorman in a way. So he was, in his retirement period, he was not a heroic figure. In ways, pathetic figure.
Even though it was a demeaning job, I never saw poor me scenario from him, ever.
Do you enjoy your work?
I do. I enjoyed him very much.
How long have you been working here at Caesars as a greeter?
7 years.
7 years. You seem to have a lot of the old fighting spirit in you, wouldn't you say?
No, I don't think so, but I enjoy working here. I got a lot of wonderful people come here.
Through the 1970s, Joe was physically wrecked. Years of fighting, stress, IRS battles, and Vegas nightlife had left him with serious heart problems and dangerously high blood pressure. He suffered a minor stroke, his speech became slurred, and he had a pacemaker fitted to keep him going while his medical bills were quietly being covered by Frank Sinatra and Max Schmeling.
Finally, he was confined to a wheelchair. His troubles with the IRS had been straightened out more or less. He was, in many respects, the antithesis, certainly physically, of what he had once been.
People would come up and give him money just because he was Joe Louis.
We wish he would have lived happily ever after and faded into the sunset and been a good grandfather and had all these wonderful middle-class values restored, but he wasn't.
Sinatra was a big admirer of Joe, and in 1978, he made sure his idol got the limelight he deserved one last time.
Frank Sinatra snapped his fingers, and everybody who was important in show business and politics and entertainment came to Caesar's Palace to honor Joe Louis, who they rolled out on stage wearing a tuxedo, and then somebody wrapped a blanket around him so he wouldn't shiver.
Look at this crowd here today. This is just 1/10 of people that want to be here. We could have the Superdome packed 5 times in New Orleans to help Joe Louis. That's how great he was. I'm just trying to be half of the champion that Joe Louis was.
He was my idol. We lived together in Detroit where I was born. I used to carry the bag for him down at Brewster Center. He was a big help to me.
We've been friends for about 35 years, and I think that this is long overdue, Dick. I think this should have been done a long time ago.
I'm glad you're doing it.
God bless him. I think he's gonna have a good time.
On the surface, it was a glitzy Vegas tribute. Sinatra on stage, the Rat Pack crowd, cameras flashing, but underneath it played like a rescue mission for a broken champion. The event raised money for Joe's youth charity, reminded America who he had been, and let him, for one more night, sit in the center of the room while the stars came to him.
Tonight, from Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, Nevada, the WBC Heavyweight Championship of the World. The champion, Larry Holmes, defends the title he won in 1978 from Ken Norton.
Maybe the guy who wrote the book on heavyweight boxing, and there is Joe Louis. He is ringside attending tonight.
On April 11th, 1981, the public got its last look at Joe Louis.
Introducing a former heavyweight champion of the world, the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis.
Later that night, his heart gave out.
Joe Louis died today in Las Vegas. The legendary Brown Bomber, who was heavyweight boxing champ longer than any other man, was a month from his 67th birthday.
Joe Louis will be buried Tuesday in Arlington National Cemetery. The Brown Bomber was an inspiration to millions of fans and friends.
I loved him. He was a credit to his profession, to his friends, and to his country. He never boasted in victory, nor did he weep in defeat. He apologized not. He knew too well that life had 15 rounds, and none of us can ever win them all.
This was a great man who transcended boxing in every way. And for the time he was champion, nobody, including Muhammad Ali, was ever more revered as a champion.
Joe Louis was the greatest phenomenon the ring had ever seen. There'd never been a career like this in heavyweight boxing, by anyone.
There are some people who are champions, but all champions are not heroes. Joe was a genuine hero.
He was a hero that came along at a time when America needed a hero. My father was representing freedom and democracy of the United States, but he couldn't live those freedoms. He couldn't eat where he wanted to eat. He couldn't live where he wanted to live.
I think Joe Louis's legacy is as much, if not more, to society than to boxing. He paved the way for other black athletes.
All I wanted to do was like Joe Louis. The Golden Gloves, I was thinking about Joe Louis. In the Olympics, I was thinking about Joe Louis.
Was he the greatest?
Of all time.